What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I am Brian and today we're going to be changing the oil in a 2.0 liter turbo Jeep JL from 2019. This is the second time that I've done this job and it's actually very easy, very straightforward. What's up everyone? Pardon the interruption. I'm here with some editorial commentary in hindsight. I had set out to make a very simple and easy tutorial about how to change the oil in a 2.0 liter turbo Jeep Wrangler. And for those of you out there who have done a DIY job, you're going to be able to relate to this. This simple and easy job really turned into a freaking nightmare. It involved multiple trips to the auto parts store and a setting sun that I really just barely was able to beat. The job is done now and so all is well. But I think the key takeaway here is that it's really helpful and useful to make sure you have all of the tools in your arsenal necessary to do the job. Now in this case, I actually thought that I did. I had all of the tools that I used the last time I did the job. It's just in this case, the Jeep shop that I go to actually did a tight and lube safety check and tightened the oil filter and drain plug way further than anything I would have expected. And the tools that I had no longer worked for removal. So I mentioned some tools early on in the video. It ended up not being the tool that I ultimately needed to get the job done. To get the job done, I do have the tools here. I will mention an oil filter cap wrench, 76 millimeter with 14 flutes by Pennzoil. You can find a link to this in the description below. And if you like this video, if you like this channel, if you need this part, by purchasing it through the link, it really does help us out. In fact, all of the proceeds for everything go to my 15-month-old daughter's savings account. She just got a check from YouTube for $112, and so we're really trying to set up her future well. This should have been all that I needed, but you'll see in the video, it actually wasn't enough. So I went and actually got this oil filter wrench that's adjustable, and it basically grips onto the filter and kind of just squeezes the whole thing and provides some leverage. And you'll see in the video, even this just barely was enough to get the job done. Anyway, that's all I've got for this now. Freaking ridiculous. Anybody that's done a DIY job, I'm sure you can relate to this. I'm actually half glad I caught this on video just for the entertainment value alone, because otherwise all of this frustration would have been for naught. And so if you're interested in learning about how to change the oil in a 2.0 liter turbo, or you just want to see some entertainment of a DIY job gone wrong, check out the video now and I'll be back with the closing thoughts. The last time I did it was exactly 6 months ago, and the oil life is now at 2% after 8,375 miles, so it seems like a good time to do an oil change. I've got all of the parts that you need to do that right here. In no particular order, we have a 1/2-inch socket. You're gonna need this to get the drain plug off. We have an oil filter Mopar part number M0-339. Now, there actually is a longer part number associated with this, and this is going to be the one that you want to find. This is 048923339BE. You're going to need 5 quarts of 5W30, preferably full synthetic. In this case, I'm using Mobil 1 Extended Performance 5W30. I've used Mobil 1 in everything from motorcycles to my McLaren, and I've always had no problems with it, so I think this oil is going to do just fine. And this is what I used last time. I'm also in this case using the Extended Performance that protects for 20,000 miles as opposed to 10, even though I'll change it at the next interval, which should be about 8,300 miles from now. I have an oil filter socket. There are many different ways that you can get an oil filter off. You could use an oil filter wrench. In this case, this works nicely with my socket wrench, and you can see here it basically allows you to get leverage on this filter to be able to loosen and tighten it. It's realistically going to be too difficult to do well with just your hand. And then just some extras, I've got some shop rags to clean up the excess oil that's going to inevitably get everywhere. I have an undercar roller to make it easier to get to the drain plug and oil filter, and I've got some gloves. I also finally have a oil drain pan to drain the oil and a funnel to load it back in. So let's get this job done. So the first thing we're going to do here is pop the hood and loosen the oil cap to relieve pressure in the system so that the oil can drain. It's probably also helpful if you just pull the drain plug ever so slightly, and then we can get under the car, drain the oil from the drain plug, and take off the oil filter. All right, so gloves on, some shop towels ready, and the drain pan underneath. I'm going to take off the oil drain plug first. It is a 1/2 inch socket. The reason I'm going to do this first is because catching the oil is more controlled when it comes out of the drain plug. And so I would rather get as much oil out of the system before taking the oil filter off. And man, I got this on there a little bit tight. All right, so this oil drain plug is actually on there much tighter than I would have expected. Much tighter than I actually had tightened it. I do think that it probably was tightened a bit further by the local Jeep shop. I had this in there for a tight and lube safety check, and so I have a feeling they maybe tightened this drain plug a little bit more than I had. So I'm using a breaker bar to get it off, but I will not use a breaker bar when I put this back on. I've got it loose now, and so I can get this off the rest of the way. And then at a certain point here, I'll probably just use my hands and hold this up high to catch as much oil as possible once it starts to flow. And there we go. So while this oil drains, you can see here this drain plug is actually a really nice setup in that it includes kind of a rubber gasket at the base of the plug. And so you don't need to find another crush washer or anything like that. And you can continue to reuse this. Just clean it off really well with a shop towel and it'll be good to reuse. That is part of what makes this oil change job so easy. All right, so the oil is drained. The next thing we're gonna do is take the oil filter off using our trusty socket wrench and oil filter socket. And once again, the shop tightened this much tighter than I would have. So I'm gonna have to use a breaker bar to get this off. All right, so this is the oil filter cap that I need to be able to get this oil filter off. It's made by Pennzoil. It's 76 millimeters with 14 flutes. All right, you know how it goes. We all start jobs like this with the best intentions, and then they go sideways when you don't have the right tools. So, second trip to the auto parts store. I have an oil filter wrench that should give me more leverage, and hopefully this will be good enough to get this oil filter off. I am losing sun, and so this really needs to work for me. Okay, my goodness, that was on there absurdly tight, a million times tighter than it needed to be. Completely unnecessary, but I've got it, and so let's get this thing drained and get this job wrapped up before I lose all of the sun. Look at what the heck that wrench did to this oil filter to be able to get this thing off. That was just torqued beyond belief. Completely unnecessary. Wow. All right, let's get this new oil filter installed. First thing I'm going to do, take a little bit of fresh oil and run it around the gasket so that this thing will seal properly, and I am not going to torque it down anywhere close to the same degree of tightness. All right, I'm going to take a shop rag, wipe this area around the filter clean, hand screw the new filter into place. Make sure that you take the time to get it threaded properly so that you don't cross thread it. You definitely don't want to damage the threads. All right. Now I'm actually going to go back to using this other oil filter wrench socket to tighten it, as I do not want it to be anywhere close to as tight as it was before. Just kind of by hand until it kind of stops. Maybe another little turn with some leverage, and that's it. That's all that needs. It does not need to be any tighter than that. All right, I've cleaned off the drain plug. Last thing to do, just put the drain plug back in place. Same thing, take the time to make sure you've threaded it correctly. Tighten it by hand as far as you can go. Then use your 1/2-inch socket to get it the rest of the way. Again, same type of thing, does not need to be too tight. Kind of by hand, that's good enough. It's not going to go anywhere. And that is a 5-minute job done in about an hour and a half, which is what happens when you have the wrong tools. But now we're all set down here to go fill this car up with oil and call it a day. All right, back to the engine bay. We're going to use our funnel to add 5 quarts of oil. Then we're going to check the level with the dipstick, pull it out and give it a good wipe the first time so we can get an accurate reading. All right, so kind of hard to tell. The reading area appears to be from there to there, and it's looking like we've got more oil than we need. The cutoff appears to be about right there. So I think we're good. This job is done. I did fill it up last time with 5 quarts and didn't have any issue. So I think that's it. Let's put the oil drain plug back in place. Pull our funnel, reinstall our oil cap, and that is a job done. So next step, I'm going to reset the oil filter light, start the car, make sure there's no leaks underneath it, and call it a day. Okay, and as you can see, the oil life was at 1%. It's actually really easy to reset this. It says hold OK to reset. The OK button is right there. So I'm going to press and hold this and Engine must be off with the ignition in run. All right, let's turn it off. Put the ignition into run. There we go. So don't step on the brake. Press the start button. Ignition will be in run. Change oil soon. Okay, here we go. All right, now I'm going to press and hold. Okay. 3, 2, 1. All right, that's it. Job is done. I am exhausted. All right, so as you can see, that was incredibly frustrating. But when you get a job done yourself, it ultimately is rewarding and you learn your vehicle and it really isn't that hard. So this is a job that if you're even remotely thinking about doing yourself, I absolutely believe that you can. It's probably the easiest oil change that you'll ever do as long as you have the right tools. And that's all I've got for this one. So thank you for watching. I appreciate you and I will see you at the next one soon.